Hello, everyone, and welcome to my room. So, the other day I was watching the Republican debate, and they were talking about this thing called Planned Parenthood. I don't know. But it caught my attention because it was actually one of the very few things that all the candidates agreed on. And I mean, does that even happen in politics where they agree on things? I don't know. The candidates all agreed on the fact that they needed to defund it. And this whole time I was thinking that Planned Parenthood was this horrible place where they killed babies, because that's what the candidates made it seem like. They talked about how they needed to defund it because they were all pro-life and that Planned Parenthood killed babies, and that's not what they wanted. That's not what they wanted to present, so they needed to defund it. After I had finished watching the debate, I asked my friends if they knew what Planned Parenthood was about, and all they said was that it was some sort of abortion clinic. And I thought to myself, does anyone really know what Planned Parenthood is about? So I did some research, and that is why I'm making this video, to inform you all about Planned Parenthood. Let's get started. Let's take it back to 1879, where Margaret Higgins was born. She was the sixth of 11 children. She had a very outspoken father who taught her two very important things. One, to always stand up for what she believed in, and two, to always speak her mind. At the age of 40, after 18 pregnancies, 11 live births, and 7 miscarriages, Margaret's mother died of tuberculosis. Shortly after her mother's death, Margaret decided that that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to be a nurse and look after pregnant women. In 1902, Margaret finished her nursing school and married an architect named William Sagner, and they moved to New York City, therefore becoming Margaret Sagner. In 1912, Margaret decided to give up her nursing career and decided to write a column for the New York Call entitled What Every Girl Should Know. The article she wrote dealt with sex education and women's health, which were two of the things that Margaret was very passionate about. It was during this time that Margaret came across her first episode of censorship, where they refused to publish some of her work because it had vulgar content. It was then that Margaret decided to challenge the 1873 federal Comstock law. But what is this law, you may ask? In 1914, Margaret divorced her husband and wrote her first article of the Woman Rebel, which was a magazine for radical feminists who advocated the right to practice birth control. Later, 3 of Margaret's issues were banned for promoting the use of contraception, and later in August 1914, Margaret was indicted of 9 charges of violating the Comstock law. And in order to avoid being arrested, she fled the country. And she went to England and she changed her name and everything. Like, how cool is that? Anyways, while she was in England, she met a bunch of British radicals and feminists, and they would get together and help to prove her point to justify birth control. While she was in England, I guess you can say that Margaret kind of gained some popularity, and then she decided to do something crazy. She stepped up her game. In October 1915, she decided to go back to the United States to face her charges that were put up against her, but sadly, in November of the same year, her 5-year-old daughter died of pneumonia. I definitely don't want to say that her daughter's death was a good thing, but we can definitely say that she did not die in vain, because once the news got out to the public that her daughter had died, the public started taking pity on her and pressuring the government into dropping all the charges against her. They were saying, poor her, she doesn't deserve this, just drop all the charges, and eventually they did. And Margaret didn't let this stop her. After her daughter's death, she went on a world tour to promote birth control. While she was on tour, she went to a Dutch birth control clinic that had developed a flexible contraceptive diaphragm, and once it was tested out by the medical staff, it resulted in being one of the best forms of birth control to this date. And when Margaret returned to the United States, she just had one thing on her mind, and that was to pursue her cause. Now this is where things get juicy. So on October 16, 1916, with the help of her sister, Margaret opened the first birth control clinic in the United States in New York and called it the Brooklyn, New York Clinic. It offered counseling and birth control information. But sadly, after 9 days, the police came to the clinic and closed it down. They confiscated everything that was in there and then arrested Margaret and the rest of her staff. Margaret had it tough, but she did not let it stop her, because then, in 1921, she founded the American Birth Control League. The mission of the American Birth Control League was to provide education by literature and lectures on preventing pregnancy. The organization would later be known as the National Birth Control League, and eventually, wait for it, Planned Parenthood Foundation of America. Yay! In which Margaret served as president until 1928. Okay, so now that you know the background and the origin of Planned Parenthood, let's talk about what they actually do and what their goals are. Planned Parenthood believes in the fundamental right that everyone should be able to manage his or her own fertility regardless of someone's individual income, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, national origin, current residence. It shouldn't matter. So that's why they try and help us by providing services such as the morning after pill, birth control, the abortion procedure, STD testing and treatment, cancer screenings and prevention, breast exams, and a bunch of other women's healthcare services. Okay, now let's get to the disagreements. Why would anyone want to stop funding Planned Parenthood, you may ask? It's because a lot of people are biased by the fact that they do conduct abortion procedures. For example, John Kyle, he said, and I quote, "Abortion services are well over 90% of what Planned Parenthood does. But here are some facts that were provided via Twitter of a worker of Planned Parenthood. This were the responses that she had when some users started asking her how could she work for Planned Parenthood. But hey, everyone has different opinions. Maybe you'll just look at the fact that they provide abortion services and you'll think, no, they're terrible. Okay, that's great. Or you'll see the big picture. It's all on you. So that's a wrap on this video. I hope you learned a little something, and if someone asks you, hey, do you know what Planned Parenthood is? You say, yes, I do. I hope you have a really good day.